Good morning, students. Today, the topic which we are going to discuss is B.F. Skinner operant conditioning. The learning objective of today's topic are discuss the concept of operant conditioning means the students will able to understand what is the concept of operant conditioning. Describe Skinner classic experiment on operant conditioning. The students will able to define the experiment done by Skinner on operant conditioning, explain the concept of functional analysis of behavior, what is the concept of functional analysis of behavior, applications, what are the applications of operant conditioning. B.F. Skinner, 1904 to 1919, was an American. His experiments on operant conditioning won him worldwide fame. Means the experiments which he conducted on operant conditioning made him worldwide fame, has given him worldwide fame. Skinner defined operant conditioning as the process of learning. Uh, Skinner defined the concept of operant conditioning as the process of learning by which a person learns how he learns the way of learning that elicits operant behavior. So, what is operant behavior? According to Skinner, there are two types of behavior. Means when we are talking the opinion of Skinner, we are saying that according to Skinner, there are two types of behaviors, namely respondent behavior and operant behavior. Now, he is saying that two types of behavior are one is the respondent behavior and the second one is operant behavior. You blink your eyes in response to a flash of light. As a flash of light was uh, there, you blink your eyes. This reflexive behavior is elicited directly by the environment. So, this is respondent behavior, spontaneous response to stimuli. Means as now here the stimuli will be the flash of light and the spontaneous response is the blinking of eyes. But most of our behaviors are not so simply generated by the environment. You are not forced by the environment to look at this book, to talk, to sing, and to eat. These behaviors are emitted by you, the individual. Through such behaviors, you operate upon the environment. These are called operant behaviors. You might argue that we eat because we are hungry. The reason of being eating is that we are hungry, we will eat. And so it cannot be operant behavior. But eating as a process is not a direct response to hunger. It's not a direct process or a direct response to the hunger, as is gastric secretion. To eat, you have to locate the bread on the plate on your table. Stretch your hand, grab it, and bring the hand back to your mouth. Put the bread in your mouth and chew and swallow. How did you know that you have to go through this complicated chain of behavior units to reduce the uncomfortable sensation in your stomach? You have seen from your experiences that if you put certain kinds of thing in your mouth and chew and swallow it, your hunger pang reduces. Means to reduce your hunger, you have to do these complicated chain of behavioral units. This had been a rewarding experience for you. You have also seen that the food does not automatically jump into your mouth. Means it's not that you have seen the food and this food will automatically jump into your mouth. It's not like that. You have to pick it up. You have to pick it up the food and put it in your mouth. And you have to put the food in your mouth. Thus, a series of rewards have taught you this process. A series of rewards have taught you this process to pick up the food and put it in your mouth. Have taught you this process of finding the food, picking it up, and eating. Again, you would not grab the food by hand if it were burning hot. It's again that we have learned through our experiences that we don't have to grab the food by hand if it was hot. You have learned that the pain of touching something hot is unpleasant, and it has been learned by us that if we touch something hot, then it will give us an unpleasant. The punishment had taught you to pick it with a fork. The punishment of touching the hot food give you the unpleasant experiences had taught you that if you want to pick up a hot food from the plate, then you have to use a fork for it. Skinner claimed that we learn most of our operant behavior through this kind of consequences. Now, what Skinner is saying that we learn most of our operant behavior through this kind of consequences means through the experiences which we got. If the consequences is favorable, means if the consequences are favorable, pleasant, to us, we tend to repeat the behavior. If they are favorable, if they are pleasant, we try to repeat those behaviors. If the consequence is unpleasant, then what will happen? We tend to refrain from doing it. We don't want to repeat those behaviors, those who are giving us, uh, those who are unpleasant, and those we don't like, in which we do not get the praise. Now, Skinner experiment. Skinner, as a young research scholar at Harvard University. Now, Skinner is from the Harvard University, conducted a series of experiments on animals. Now, Skinner has conducted a number of experiments on animals to formalize his idea of operant conditioning, and he has done series of experiments on animals only so that he can formalize his idea of operant conditioning. Some of you may have heard of the Skinner box, which is a sort of mini laboratory for acquiring operant behavior. For conducting uh, a series of experiments on animals, Skinner had developed a Skinner box. And that Skinner box is a sort of mini laboratory for Skinner, and that mini laboratory is helpful for Skinner for acquiring operant behaviors. In this section, you would learn how Skinner conducted his experiment with the help of this box, the Skinner box, and what its implications are for behavior modification. The experiment which Skinner has conducted. The Skinner box is a simple box used to conditional operant behavior in animals, and that box is used to condition operant behavior in animals. This box usually contains a lever. This box had a lever or sometimes some other devices which must be manipulated to get some reward, or other devices can be used, and these devices which must be manipulated in such a way that it will give some rewards to the animals. In his classic experiment, Skinner placed a semi stuffed rat in the box. There was a lever which, after being pressed, released a mechanism to deliver a pallet of food to the rat. Means the rat has to press that lever, and when the rat press that lever, he will deliver a pallet of food. Initially, the rat is engaged in a number of random behaviors. Means uh, to get the food, the rat has to manipulate that lever. But when the skinner put the rat in the skinner box, he started behaving or gives some random behaviors. He did not uh, directly manipulate the liver. He does some random behaviors, the random behaviors of rat like walking, sniffing, and scratching. None of these help to get the food. None of these behavior help the rat to get the food. At some point of time, the rat accidentally hit the liver. By chance, what happens? The rat accidentally hit the liver, and as the rat hit the liver, the food was delivered. And the food was delivered. Of course, for the semi stuffed rat, this was a big reward. Food was a big reward for that rat. Skinner observed that after a few accidental manipulation of the liver, means the rat did not know how to manipulate that liver. The rat started spending more times near the liver. What happened when again Skinner put the rat in the Skinner cage? The rat started spending most of the time near the liver only, and then deliberately pressed the liver, and then he deliberately pressed the liver whenever it was hungry, whenever the rat was hungry. So now pressing the liver became an new operant for the rat. Whenever the rat was hungry, he just deliberately pressed the liver, and what happened? The pressing of liver became a new operant for the rat. Skinner further noted that if the pressing of the liver did not deliver food any longer, means the rat has pressed the liver, but he did not get the food, did not deliver food any longer. He will not get the food any longer. The operant behavior by the rat decrease. The operant behavior which the rat has learned will decrease and gradually stop altogether. And gradually, the operant behavior of the rat will stop. This is known as experimental extension of operant conditioning. Means the rat decreased and gradually stopped behaving like that is known as experimental extension of operant conditioning. This is the Skinner box, and this a rat was put in that Skinner box. The rat has to manipulate the liver to get the food, and the food is worked as a reinforcement for the rat. When after a number of trials, the rat know that to get the food, he has to manipulate the liver. And after some time, when the Skinner put the rat in this cage, then most of the time the rat spent near the liver. Now, interpretation of the results of the experiment. In Skinner terms, means as defined by the Skinner, every random behavior that the rat demonstrated. Now, the random behavior will be when he is walking, jumping, trying each and everything to come out of the cage and have the food. And these are the random behaviors that the rat demonstrated within the box was also some kind of operant behavior. Skinner saying that the random behavior that the rat was demonstrating within the box was also some kind of operant behavior what the rat is doing. But these have been conditioned in the rat prior to your working upon it. The rat had been rewarded earlier for each of these behaviors. Means the rat will get some food when he will manipulate the liver. For example, earlier it had scratched a paper packet and food had split from it. But now, within the Skinner's box, none of them succeed to reduce its hunger. Then, accidentally, another behavior pressing of liver. Accidentally, by chance, he pressed the liver, which was completely new for the rat. Means, pressing of the liver was completely a new thing which the rat was doing. New for the rat brought about the reward, and that new behavior that the rat has learned brought about the reward to the rat, and that reward was the food. The food served as the reinforcer to strengthen this new operate. Means the food works here as the reinforcement for the rats to strengthen this new operant behavior that the pressing of the liver will give him the food. As in successive trials, the newly acquired behavior continued to be rewarded. The new acquired behavior, that manipulation of the liver, will give him some foods. The probability of its occurrence also increase. Now, the probability of manipulating the liver and getting the food will increase. Skinner developed his thesis of environmental determination of behavior. The first pressing of the lever by the rat was accidental. By chance, the rat has pressed the lever, but the accidental behavior could be shaped into a relatively long lasting modification. But this accidental behavior means the rat did not know that the manipulation of the lever will give him some food could be shaped into a relatively long lasting modification in behavior. Long lasting modification in behavior means that the rat will learn that a change in the behavior of the rat will occur, that as he manipulates the liver, he will get the food. Repeated by manipulating its consequences is a specified direction. One significant point in Skinner's view is that learning is determined by the consequences of the behavior. That learning is determined by the consequences of the behavior. What are the consequences? Whether we will get any reinforcement for that behavior or not. If we get the reinforcement, then learning will be better, the learning will be permanent and not by the antecedents. Antecedents provides the context, but consequence really decide whether the behavior would be conditioned or not. You may readily understand that this is a rather proactive statement and upon a large number of possibilities for manipulations of human behavior. Measuring operant behavior. Quantification of operant behavior was crucial to Skinner's work. He needed to demonstrate that through appropriate use of reward and punishment, you can actually increase the probability of occurrence of a conditioned operant behavior. Therefore, Skinner introduced the rate of occurrence of the target behavior as the measure of operant conditioning. He simply counted how many times the learned behavior has taken place within a given time. In fact, he used the cumulative frequency of the operant behavior as the final indicator. If you put it in a graphical form, you will readily see whether the probability of the occurrence of that behavior was actually increased over time. Take, for example, the liver pressing behavior of the rat, which it learned in 3 hours. Means the rat learns the manipulation of the liver and come out of the box and have food. He learns that behavior in almost 3 hours. Let us say we divide the total time in three equal units, 1 hour each. In the first hour, the rat was more engaged in random behaviors, means walking, jumping, and trying each and everything to come out of the Skinner's cage and have food. At the end of the first hour, it's accidentally pressed the lever. Means at the end of the first hour, the rat accidentally pressed the lever and got the food, and food was delivered. During this second hour, it also pressed the lever 3 times more. But in the second hour, he pressed the lever 3 times more than the first hour. Then it started staying close to the lever, and he trying to stay close to the lever, and in the third and the final hour press the lever deliberately 10 times. When the rat pressed the lever 10 times, it's clearly indicated that the rat has learned that behavior. When the rat repeating the same behavior, or we can say that rat pressed the lever 10 times, it's clearly indicated that the rat has learned that behavior. Which Skinner wanted it to learn? That behavior which the Skinner wanted the rat to learn. That is pressing the lever when hungry in order to satisfy the hunger. Skinner wanted the rat to learn that behavior, that if he was hungry and he wants the food, he wants to press the lever, he wants to manipulate the lever. Now, shaping. Shaping is an extremely important concept in operant conditioning, as it refers to the application of its principle of behavior modification. As it refers, mean shaping refers to the application of its principle of behavior modification to bring change in the behavior of the individual. Shaping means modification of the organism behavior, means bringing change in the behavior of the organism to the experimenter desired end, as the experimenter wants, means as the experimenter desired. In this case, the Skinner wants that when the rat uh, think that he was hungry, he has to manipulate the liver to get the food, and this is the desired and that the experimenter wants. Shaping does not occur all in one go. Skinner says it's take place only through successive approximations. Means it is not learned in one go. Uh, the shaping takes place through successive approximations. Suppose you are trying to modify a child behavior, means you want to change a child behavior by selectively rewarding the response desired by you, by selectively rewarding the response that you want, that you desire, before the ultimate desired behavior is encountered. the child usually engage in numerous other behavior. Means ultimate desire behavior that you want. Before that, the child is usually engaged in numerous various other behaviors which may be considered as steps to the final behavior. Means that numerous behavior that child will do may be considered as steps to the final behavior, the desired behavior. They are close to the target, but not the target per se. If these approximate targets behavior are rewarded, shaping is facilitated. Means we have to reinforce, give reward, praise the approximate target behaviors. Then only shaping will be facilitated. Skinner discovered this principle of successive approximation rather accidentally. He was conditioning a pigeon to swipe a ball with his beak movement, which in turn would release a food vaccine. The pigeon was not lucky enough. After waiting for the accidental success to happen for a long time, Skinner was bored. So, just casually, he decided to reward any behavior that might lead towards the target behavior. Now, Skinner decided that he will reward any behavior that might lead towards the target behavior, the desired behavior, even if it is as simple as glassing as the ball. Means that target behavior is as simple as glassing the ball. As these approximate behavior was successfully rewarded, to Skinner's surprise, the total process was quick. Very soon, the ball was caroming off the walls of the box as if the pigeon had been a champion squash player. Rewarding of the simplest step has automatically lead to the next higher step and so on. This is successful approximation. How would you know which behavior are approximating the target? Means how will you able to know that which behavior will be considered as the behavior for approximating the targets? Skinner proposed that you need to do the functional analysis of behavior for understanding and controlling shaping. For that, Skinner said that if you want to understand that what is approximating the target, Skinner proposed that for that we need to do the functional analysis of behavior for understanding and controlling shaping. This analysis will help you to identify the elements of the final behavior as well as possible successive steps to it. Means this functional analysis of behavior will help you to identify the elements of the final behavior as well as the possible successive steps to it. For each small step, you must identify the antecedents and consequence. The antecedents will lead to the next step and the consequent will reinforce it. This kind of breaking down of behavior into antecedents, behavior, consequent change is famously known as ABC technique. Means the antecedent, behavior, consequent is famously known as ABC technique. As each step is rewarded or punished, the learner automatically proceeds to the next step. Means in that every simple step of the learner will be rewarded or he will be punished, and by getting the reward or the punishment the learner will automatically proceed to the next step. Thus, through successive approximation to the target, she finally reaches the desired behavior. This is, according to Skinner, the fundamental principle of shaping. And this is the fundamental principle of shaping. Furthermore, for shaping, you need to deliver reinforcements and punishments in an intelligently predetermined manner. Reinforcement in operant conditioning and its schedules. Positive and negative reinforcement. As in classical conditioning, reinforcement can be positive and negative in operant conditioning also. As we have learned that in classical conditioning there can be reinforcement, it can be a positive or it can be a negative. So also in operant conditioning where reinforcement can be positive or negative. Positive reinforcement are those pleasurable consequences of behavior that make the behavior more probable. Are those pleasurable consequences? Means those consequences will give pleasure to the learner. Example is praise from the teacher after being able to tell the square root of 169. The praise which the learner will get after he will able to tell the teacher what will be the square root of 169. Negative reinforcers are those unpleasant consequences of not producing the target behavior that makes the behavior more probable. For example, the teacher asks you the square root of 169 and look with fairy eyes at you. He will continue to do it till you give the correct answer. By producing the desired response, you terminate the loop, the negative reinforcement. Means if you will able to give the correct answer, the correct square root of 169, you will able to terminate the loop, and that loop will work as a negative reinforcer for the learner. Primary and secondary reinforcement. Reinforcement may be primary, that is concerned with the basic needs, or it can be secondary or continued, acquiring its reinforcement value only through association with the primary reinforcement. Food is a primary reinforcement as it's helpful for the survival, and those reinforcers that are useful for the survival are known as the primary reinforcer. But if you make me work for money or for sweet words, you are using the secondary or condition reinforcement. We can neither eat nor drink nor sleep money, yet we are all reinforced by money because of its symbolic value through association. The famous tale of King's Middles actually highlights the significance of primary reinforcer, food and water, over the secondary one, that is gold. Now, schedule of reinforcement means when the reinforcement should be given, what should be the schedule of reinforcement. Continuous reinforcement schedule, interval schedule. Internal interval scheduling means that the reinforcement would be given after a certain time interval following the target behavior. Rate of learning in different schedules. The rate of learning differs in these different schedules. In fixed interval schedules, greater target behavior is observed near the end of the schedule, but the rate falls down immediately after the delivery of the reward. The variable interval schedule produces a slow, steady rate of response. In general, ratio scheduling produces better responses that interval schedule. Fixed ratio schedule results in a steady and high rate of response. The variable ratio scheduling has been found to be the best as it's maintained a high level of expectation and thus produces a very high and steady rate of response. Fixed ratio reinforcement schedule. Ratio schedule refers to reinforcing the target behavior after a specified number of behavior. Means after a specified number of behavior, we have to reinforce the target behavior. Variable reinforcement schedule in variable interval schedule of reinforcement. The deliverance of the food pattern is varied randomly around an average time interval. Now, punishment, on the other hand, is the presentation of an adverse event or outcome that causes a decrease in the behavior. It follows there are two kinds of punishment. The first one is positive punishment, sometimes referred to as punishment by application, involves the presentation of an unfavorable event or outcome in order to weaken the responses it's followed. The negative punishment, also known as punishment by removal, occur when a favorable event or outcome is removed after a behavior occurs. In both of these cases of punishment, the behavior decreases. Now, applications of Skinner's operant conditioning behavior modification, token economy, behavior shaping. Now, first we will discuss the concept of behavior modification. Behavior modification is a set of therapies, techniques based on operant conditioning, and these techniques are based on the operant conditioning of Skinner. The main principle comprise changing environmental events that are related to a person behavior. The main principle comprises what? Behavior modification results to environmental events that are related to person behavior, how that behavior person is behaving. For example, the reinforcement of desired behavior means when we are reinforcing the behavior that we desired and ignoring or punishing undesired behavior, and we are ignoring or punishing that behavior that is not desired anymore or that can be called as an undesired behavior. This is not as simple as it sounds. Means behavior modification is not as simple as it sounds. Always reinforcing desired behavior means we have to reinforce the desired behavior. For example, is basically bribery. When we are reinforcing the desired behavior which we want is basically bribery, to give bribery. There are different types of positive reinforcements. Different types of positive reinforcement. Primary reinforcement is when a reward strengthens a behavior by itself. Secondary reinforcement is when something strengthens a behavior because it leads to a primary reinforcement. Examples of behavior modification therapy include token economy and behavior shaping. Now, token economy. What is the concept of token economy? Token economy is a system in which targeted behaviors are reinforced with tokens. The target behaviors are reinforced with tokens, secondary reinforcement, and later exchanged for rewards. And later on, it was exchanged for rewards, and that rewards work as the primary reinforcement. Tokens can be in the form of fake money, buttons, poker chips, stickers, etc., while the reward can range anywhere from snacks to privileges or activities. For example, teachers use token economy at primary class school by giving young children stickers to reward good behavior. Means the teachers are giving students, the children, young children, stickers as a reward for their good behavior. Token economy has been found to be very effective in managing psychiatric patients. Means that technique is very effective when we are managing the psychiatric patients. However, the patients can become over reliant on the tokens, making it difficult for them to adjust to society once they leave prison, hospital, etc. Staff implementing a token economy program have a lot of power. It is important that staff do not favor or ignore certain individuals if the program is to work. Therefore, staff need to be trained to give token fairly and consistently even when there are shift changes such as in prison or in psychiatric hospital. Behavior shaping, a further important contribution made by Skinner 1951, is the notion of behavior shaping through successive approximation. Skinner argued that principles of operant conditioning can be used to produce extremely concept behavior if rewards and punishments are delivered in such a way as to encourage move an organism closer and closer to the desired behavior each time. To do this, the conditions or contingencies required to receive the reward should shift each time the organism moves a step closer to the desired behavior. According to Skinner, most animals and human behavior, including language, can be explained as a product of this type of successive approximation. So, to students, today we have discussed the operant conditioning by V.F. Skinner. The experiment that was conducted by V.F. Skinner and the education applications of the theory given by V.F. Skinner. For further reading on this topic, you can refer these references. Now let us discuss some MCQs, as MCQs are the best way to know the learning outcomes of a learner. Now the first one is Skinner's theory states that if a behavior is rewarded, its probability of occurrence is means when we are reinforcing a behavior, then what will be the probability of the consequence?